Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and first and foremost, happy new year. I am now in 2024. In fact, we are now in 2024. I'm not even filming this in 2023. So obviously this is a little bit belated, but today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I managed to read in the month of December. This is officially my last wrap up for 2023, and let me tell you, I'm just going to have to count a minute. You heard me right, I'm gonna have to count because I actually read a very substantial amount of books. So in the month of December, I managed to read a grand total of 14 books. I don't know how I managed that. I really don't, and I don't think I'll ever manage it again, but I read 14 books, which brought my yearly grand total up to 75 books, which honestly is insane. Bearing in mind, I've had Goodreads since 2011. I've had this channel since 2011. I have never got nowhere near 75 books. I think the most I've ever read in a year is around about 30 to 40 books, which is still quite a lot for me, but 75 books, that's madness. I don't know how I managed that, and I don't think I'll ever manage to do it again. I'm very proud of myself, and I wish that there was a prize for reading a lot of books. I feel like I would have won an award for like the most improved reader, because honestly, like the past 2 years, I think last year I read about 20 odd, and I think the year before that I read about 20 odd. It could have even have been 5 books. Like, my reading dipped off, so I don't know what happened last year. I hope it continues this year. We shall see. So without further ado, let's talk about the books that I read in December. So the first 11 books. I think it's 11. I'm not going to bother counting them again. I'm going to mention at the same time because they are all a part of the same series, and I don't want to drivel on and talk about each individual book and have to edit in each individual like book cover because it's so unnecessary. But if you saw my last video, you will know what I read. My month of December was taken up by none other than Tahara Murphy with the Shatam series. You had that right, I read the whole Shatam series. I only planned on reading maybe 1 or 2 books, and then I just ended up reading the whole series because they were really addictive and I couldn't stop, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do a reading vlog on this anyway, let's just read the whole thing. I did not expect to finish it all and then be able to read other books after that, but I did. I bossed it, what can I say? So I'm gonna give you a brief overview of what I thought of the series overall, but if you want to hear kind of like my individual thoughts on each book in the series, then feel free to go watch the reading vlog. It's nearly an hour long, I'm really sorry, but thank you so much to everyone who watched, because that video has got some love and I didn't expect it to because it's so long. My dog was crying. Look, tell the viewers you do this every time. Every time! We can only see your little head a little bit. Like, this is how I'm sitting because I'm comfortable and you make me uncomfortable. So could you please situate yourself somewhere? As I was saying, if you would like to see my thoughts on each individual book, I obviously do have a reading vlog, so go over there because I obviously talk about the books more in detail and like you'll see my reactions to certain things. So if you're not sure what the Shatam series is about, it essentially follows a 17-year-old girl named Juliet, and she is essentially kind of, I don't want to say imprisoned, but she's kind of imprisoned in like this mental asylum because she has a lethal touch. So basically anyone that she touches dies. Now, this is a dystopian series, and essentially what has happened is the world's gone to shit. The ozone has like slowly deteriorated, animals have slowly died off, food has become really scarce, and essentially this governing body called the Re-establishment took over and basically told people that they are going to try and get things back to how they were, and they're going to try and repair the world and whatever, and that hasn't happened. During this time that the world was going to shit, certain people started to develop really weird powers, and obviously Juliet is one of them. And this series essentially follows Juliet as she is taken away from the asylum by a guy named Warner, who is like a sector leader. The world is kind of governed by this governing body called like the Re-establishment, but they are essentially kind of like a military group, and Warner happens to be like a sector leader, and things go from there. I feel like that's all you need to know. I went into this knowing absolutely nothing other than the fact that Juliet had this power that could kill people, which is what really intrigued me about the series in the first place, but you really don't need to know much going in. So the first thing that I would say is this series is super entertaining, which is why I kept reading it for so long. I only really expected to read like the first or second book in the series, and then I just carried on because I was so invested. Each book kind of ends on a cliffhanger, which just made me want more all the time. I would say that I was more invested in the characters and the romance in the series than I was invested in the actual story, although the story was kind of intriguing. But this series did have some pretty big flaws. I felt like the world building was pretty bad. I don't really feel like it was well fleshed out, and I kind of felt towards the end and with certain books they were kind of like gap fillers, and you weren't really getting anywhere in the story until right at the end, and then obviously you'd be intrigued so you'd read the next one, but then the next one would be the same. And I kind of just feel like overall this was a romance story shrouded in kind of like a dystopian storyline. Oh my god, if you can hear the rain, I can't. To say January blues is an understatement. It has not stopped raining, my god. But yeah, I kind of feel like the dystopian storyline wasn't necessarily well planned. It just didn't seem well thought out. The world building was very vague. Like, I think I had to be well into the series until I actually understood where Juliet was based, which was kind of annoying because in a dystopian series or like book or whatever, I kind of, even though the world has changed, I still want to know what I'm picturing, and usually with dystopian worlds they're still on Earth, so it was kind of hard for me to picture exactly where I was geographically. Having said that, I did really love seeing some of the development with Juliet's character. I could see maybe why people wouldn't like her, but I really enjoyed seeing her like little feminine rage moments and like seeing her kind of have her like badass moments every now and again. I obviously really loved Warner. Honestly, he was one of my favourite characters. I feel like the friendship between, I say friendship very loosely, but the friendship between Kenji and Warner, top tier. I loved them. They were hilarious. Just Warner in general, oh my god, my baby. Just protect him at all costs. I love Warner. Like, I love him. Another thing that I'll add that's kind of like a negative is that I do feel like towards the end, I feel like certain plot lines were being recycled a little bit. Like, it kind of felt like some of the books at the end were the same plot as the previous book, but they were just like a little bit different. So I'm being really negative about the series, but I did actually give some of them a high rating, and overall I really enjoyed the series. If you want something really quick to read and you don't mind reading YA still, like, honestly, give them a go. I'm very much a person that I can kind of overlook a bad book if I really love the characters, and like vice versa. So I'm going to give you the individual ratings that I gave each book. Obviously I did read the novellas as well, but if you want to see kind of like more of my feelings on this series, the reading vlog will be linked at the end of this video. So I gave Shatter Me, the first book, 3 stars. Destroy Me, I gave 4 stars. Unravel Me, I gave 4 stars. Fracture Me, I gave 3 stars. Ignite Me, I gave 4 stars. Restore Me, I gave 5 stars. Let me just say, most of that was for the ending, because that ending. Shadow Me, I gave 3 stars. Defy Me, I gave 3 stars. Reveal Me, I gave 3 stars. Imagine Me, I gave 3 stars. And then Believe Me, I gave 4 stars, because I am a mushy gushy bitch and I love a romance happy ending. So So then the next book that I read in December was actually a book by an author that I don't know if I swore off the author, if I just swore off the series in general. I decided to give her a second go because she has another trilogy that everyone loves, and they say that that trilogy is better than the other trilogy, and I just was intrigued. Okay, I don't know what drew me to it, but I was intrigued. And that book is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is the first book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. This trilogy follows a young girl named Evangeline Fox, and it's set in the same world as Caraval, which I did read the first book in the Caraval trilogy earlier on in the year. I didn't like it. I think I gave it like 2 stars, and I swore off anything Caraval related until I decided to pick up this book. Anyway, Evangeline Fox is very much a hopeless romantic. Like, she believes in true love, and the young man that she is in love with is set to marry her stepsister, and so she decides to get the help of a fate named Jax to help her stop the wedding. And because obviously the fates deal with bargains, the bargain is that he will obviously stop the wedding for her, but then she will owe him 3 kisses at the time of his choosing. with whoever he chooses. And that plot just like, it intrigued me. I was like, I love that and I need to read that. And I think there was maybe something on Booktok that kind of, I kept seeing like character art and I was like, oh, I really want to read it. Like, I feel like that sounds like my cup of tea. I feel like I need to read it. So I gave this one 3 stars, and I do have to say that I will carry on with this trilogy. And not only that, but I've now been intrigued to carry on with the Caraval trilogy. I actually went on Booktok because I wanted to see whether anyone had kind of the same journey as me. I saw a young woman on Booktok who read the first Caraval book, didn't really love it, and then she read Once Upon a Broken Heart, really loved that. And then she read the rest of the Caraval series, ended up really loving it, and then she went back to Once Upon a Broken Heart. So I kind of feel like that's the journey I'm going to take now, because there are things in Once Upon a Broken Heart that haven't been really elaborated on, and there's parts of the story that I know I'm missing, because Jax is a character that you do meet in the Caraval series, and also the 2 sisters who are in Caraval actually are in Once Upon a Broken Heart, and there's like a whole storyline between Jax and one of the sisters, and I feel like I'm lost at sea and I don't know the whole story, and I want to know the whole story because I'm nosy and I need to know everything. So I feel like that's the journey that I'm going to take, and I'm glad to see that other people have felt the same. So the first thing that I would say is that I definitely found this book way more intriguing than Caraval. I feel like there were some really interesting kind of like parts to Caraval, but I remember really not liking the world building and just like the world in general. It was a bit too whimsical for my liking. But when I read Once Upon a Broken Heart, although it was still whimsical, I feel like I could picture everything a little bit better. And not only that, but I just really loved the characters more, like Jax. I need to know more about Jax, first of all. Second of all, Evangeline was way more likeable than the sister in the Caraval book. I know that the second book, I think, follows her other sister, but like the first sister in Caraval, no thank you. She was an absolute wet wipe. So Evangeline was way more tolerable than her. The only thing that I would say is that I don't really feel like a lot happened in this book. I feel like everything is kind of just being built up for the next 2 books in the series, and I know a lot of people really love the second book, so I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm happy that I enjoyed it more than Caraval. Obviously I only gave it 3 stars, but I feel like it was a really good 3 stars. Like, it's kind of like, and I'm intrigued and I will carry on. It's not like a 3 stars, it was okay, I'm not really bothered by it, because I am bothered. I want to read on. I want to enjoy the series. So then the next book that I read in December was Caught Up by Liz Tomfold. This is the 3rd book in the Windy City series. It is a series that I really ended up loving in 2023. I think I read every single book in that series last year. I'm pretty sure. But basically it is a set of sports romance stories. Obviously every single book follows a different character and a different romance plot, but obviously the books are kind of intertwined, so you kind of see characters from previous books make a show in future books, and you kind of get to catch up with them and see how they're getting on and whatever. Honestly, Liz Tomfold is one of my favourite sports romance authors right now. I feel like her and Mariana Zapata are like my go-tos for sports romance. And let me tell you guys, because this is a first, I read the first 2 books in the Windy City series and I really loved them. I gave them 4 stars. Caught Up, the 3rd book in the series, I gave 5 stars. I loved it and I didn't expect to, and I will tell you why. So this one follows Kai, who is a professional baseball player, and he's also like a single dad. And basically in the previous Windy City book, we find out that basically he's been going through nannies left, right and centre, and he keeps like firing them for whatever reason because he doesn't trust them with his kid. And obviously he needs a nanny to try and keep up with his career. And in this book, we have Miller, who is the daughter of the coach for the baseball team. Now Miller is, I think she's 25, but basically she is a really renowned chef. She's actually a pastry chef, and she's kind of fallen on a hard time in her career. She's won like this really prestigious award, and she's kind of at this point where the pressure's just really got to her, and she feels like she's hit a block in the road, to the point where she now can't bake. Everything she bakes burns, or she just can't bake at all, and everything is going wrong. So she decides to take a step back, go back to Chicago, meet up with her dad, and kind of like just chill out a bit. And during this time, her dad basically says to her, look, stay in Chicago and look after this guy's kid for like the 3 months that you're not being a chef and then go back to your career. Because essentially Miller has been going from place to place because she feels bad for the fact that her dad's had to kind of like bring her up and give up his career in order for her to kind of like create her now livelihood. And so she kind of like runs away a lot and like doesn't stay in one place too long because she doesn't want her dad tied down again. So we have kind of like this nanny baseball player romance, and I loved this so much, and I didn't expect to, because I'm not a huge fan of like things to do with children, because I'm not a maternal person. I don't get it. There is not one part of my brain that switches on and is like, I get it. I get that love for that child, because I'm not maternal. I don't feel it. I can't relate to it. Am I now a fan of single dad romance? I could very well be. So leave your suggestions below, because I need them. First of all, the chemistry between these two characters, pun intended, chef's kiss. Honestly, the banter that these two had going on had me blushing. It was so funny. Like, they had this really dirty banter all the time, and it was just hilarious. And like, even the baseball player team, like, they'll call her like the hot nanny and stuff. I loved it. It was so good. Like, I love it when an author can write really good chemistry between two characters that just has you like kicking your feet up in the air and giggling. Like, they were great. I loved them. It was really mushy-gushy, which I also loved, and I have to say that the love confession in this book was beautiful. Like, I can't. If this doesn't convince you to read the Windy City series, then I don't know what will, but like, this book was just I loved it. It was amazing. The other reason, and I would probably say this is a really big reason why I really loved this one compared to the other two, was the third act breakup. Usually, characters have a really stupid argument between each other that could literally be solved with them just talking it out and having some communication. But in this book, that didn't happen. The characters, they kind of did break up. They went their separate ways, but they always knew that. There was no kind of like argument or fight or anything like that, which I really enjoyed, because it was almost like the right person, wrong time kind of situation. And it was just so nice to finally see a romance play out like that, because it's not always going to end up in an argument. And I also really loved seeing the progression of Miller just kind of like having her barriers broken down, because obviously she's been this character that has had them up all the time. She never forms connections, she never makes friends or romantic relationships, and it was just so lovely to see her character just completely change throughout the book and actually decide, oh, you know, I maybe want different in my life now. Anyway, I really thought that this one was the piece de la resistance of the Windy City series, and I thought it was excellently paced, which is something that I will say. I feel like the previous two books have sometimes been a little bit too long, but this one was just, it hit the mark. It was excellent. I can't wait for the next book. I'm so excited, but I'm actually not sure whether anything could top this. Like, I really don't think it could. So then the final book that I read in December, which honestly I didn't expect to read, but I did, and I'm kind of a bit torn, because I read it and now I have to wait so long for the next book, and I'm kind of not happy about it. But that book is Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is the sequel to Belladonna. Obviously, I'd previously said in a couple of months back that, oh, I'm going to read this book this month, and then I didn't, and then I said it again and again, and I finally got to it. I read it. Let me tell you, I loved Belladonna, but my god, did I love Foxglove. December was just such a great reading month for me. I read so much, but also I read so many good books. January might be my downfall. I hope not, but like, I'm a pessimist, so... But if you're not sure what Foxglove and Belladonna is about, obviously I'll just give you a brief overview of the first book, because Foxglove is the sequel and I don't want to ruin it. But Belladonna is a gothic romantasy that follows this young woman named Signa Faro, and essentially she is orphaned when she is a baby, so she's been passed on to family member, and she cannot die, but she can also see Death himself, and to see Death himself, she takes belladonna berries. Now, because she's passed from family member to family member, she actually has this kind of like what people think is a curse, because every family member she's left with, death follows her and like someone dies. And eventually she's given to this family called the Hawthorns, and there she meets her cousin Blythe and another cousin whose name I can't remember and this other guy who I can't remember. But essentially when she arrives, Blythe is very, very ill to the point where she is actually on death's doorstep, and I think a few months prior, or like a year prior, the lady of the house, aka Blythe's mum, actually died from the same sickness that Blythe now has. Then obviously the end of Belladonna has a cliffhanger, and so I obviously didn't immediately go on to Foxglove. I think I had this irrational fear that I loved the first book so much that I was scared the second book wouldn't live up to the same standard. Oh my god. I rated Belladonna 5 stars. I also gave Foxglove 5 stars, but when I tell you, if I could give Foxglove 10 stars, I would. I loved Foxglove so much. We are introduced to a character named Prince Aris. He does have another name, but I feel like if I say it, it spoils kind of like some of the plot of the first book, so I won't say it. But we meet Prince Aris, and when I tell you, he had me blushing. Like, this is very much a like Regency era, like it's giving Bridgerton but with fantasy elements. And so obviously it's a day and age where women have to be ladies and they have to be chaperoned and go to dances and have dance cards, and they can't be seen with men alone. And Prince Aris just had me blushing so much, like the things that would come out of his mouth. I can't, there's like one scene that I think about that just gives me the giggles. I don't want to say it because I feel like it's something that you need to enjoy when you read it yourself, but like, I was kicking my feet up in the air a lot, and it was great. I loved him. My favourite character so far. The first thing I wrote down is the vibes are immaculate, and let me tell you, the vibes were immaculate and I loved it, and I really don't need to say more than that because honestly it was just so good. This obviously still has kind of like a subplot going on of like a murder mystery, the same as the first book, but I feel like in this book it kind of takes a little bit of a step back because the plot kind of like thickens in terms of like the fantasy elements in this one. And so although you're intrigued to see kind of where the murder mystery bit goes, I wasn't as invested. What I will say though is that it did keep me on my toes, because I feel like in the first book I was kind of easily guessing certain things, whereas in this one I was kind of like, oh, like I don't know where this is going, and then I would only kind of like guess it just before the characters would mention something, so I quite like that about it. I would also say that in this one there's a way more kind of like romantic chemistry. Let me tell you, I loved Death and like obviously Signa in the first book, but like this guy named Prince Aris, there was way more chemistry. I loved the romance way more. Like the build up that I could see happening was just immaculate. Like I can't. I will also say I loved Blythe's character in this book, and dare I say I loved Blythe more than I loved Signa. I really like Signa, but in this book we also get Blythe's point of view, and she is so fiery. We kind of get a taste for it in the first book, but in the second book you get even more, and I loved her character. Like I'm so excited for Wisteria coming out in August. You do not understand. Like if I have not made you want to read Belladonna and Foxglove, like I don't know what will make you want to read it, but please, dear God, please just try it, because it's really beautifully written, and just it's giving gothic, it's giving moody, and I feel like it's perfect to read now. So the time is now. If you want to read it, read it. So those are all of the books that I read in December. As I said, my grand total for the year was 75 books. I still can't believe I read that much. And I'm absolutely terrified that this year I won't read anywhere near that much. Anyway, that was my December wrap up. If you guys read any of the same books that I did and you love them, let me know below. If not, tell me what your favourite book of December was. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more content from me, then don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. So bye guys.